Hello, everyone. We will start. We're still waiting for some speakers to arrive, but hopefully they will arrive soon. So my name is Inês Ajuda. I'm the program leader for Farm Animals at EU Group for Animals, and I have the pleasure to be moderating the event today. The event is hosted by MEP Stefan Kuhler and MEP Christian Wegeningen. And I will introduce briefly the event, and just to say that it's a very intense and concentrated event, so I'll try to keep everyone on time. I know the speakers have heard a lot about me saying, please keep it on time. As you know, the European Food Forum is an independent, policy-led, non-partisan, multi-stakeholder forum funded by and governed by elected members of the European Parliament. EFF aims to promote open multi-stakeholder dialogues on competitive, resilient, sustainable and innovative food systems among policymakers, food supply chain actors, civil society organizations, research and academia, and other public institutions. And also, it doesn't itself take position on specific policy issues. So we'll see today there is a myriad of speakers, and also each speaker has the freedom to express their opinion. In terms of the Q&A session rules, just to say that it's an open debate, so every participant can ask questions, raising their hands or using the chat for the ones online. Do not be shy, please. The Q&A session will be at the end with all the speakers, who will have two panels, and the question should be no longer than 1 minute. The event will be recorded, and it's important to highlight that, and has the participation of journalists. So I will quickly pass on the words to our two co-hosts, MEP Kuhler first and MEP Wegeningen secondly. And just to say that it is a very important topic, and of course I'm a bit biased on when I say animal welfare is important, but also to the spirit of the European Food Forum. This event leads us to a discussion about how to set that in the term and in the conditions that we are living now. So, MEP Kuhler.
Thank you very much, Ines, dear colleagues, dear Christian, dear panelists, dear EFF members, and dear participants. As chair of the European Food Forum and host of this important event, I have the honor of welcoming you to today's discussion on animal welfare. To begin, I would like to thank my co-host Christian Wegeningen, the EFF team, and the organizing committee for their hard work and dedication to today's event. I would also like to thank the panelists for making the time to join us today, and I'm sure we will have a productive and interesting discussion on the topic of animal welfare. Before we start, allow me to share some considerations. I'm a farmer myself, and I hope my son will take over one day our family business. And our cattle lives in the summertime in the fields, has in the wintertime a playpen with straw and a lot of space with outdoor climate. This is what I consider the best for them. This form of extensive animal husbandry is also expensive and requires a lot of land, expertise, and dedication. In order to continue this practice, I have to rely on my customers to pay for higher animal welfare. This is a message that I would like to stress today. Animal welfare along the value chain has a price, and this price cannot be paid by the farmers alone. If we ask for higher animal welfare, we need to make sure that the costs are distributed along the value chain. Let us consider the situation in my home country, Germany. If you ask customers before they walk into the supermarket about the preferences when shopping for groceries, the majority will tell you that they pay attention to animal welfare labels and good production standards. When you look at their shopping carts a few minutes later, you will mostly find that the price dictates that what they purchased, not the animal welfare labels or the production standards. As a result, the farmers often get the short end of the stick. In my opinion, we need to have an open and honest conversation about how these costs can be fairly distributed along the value chain. I hope that we can touch on this and many other important aspects. For example, the review of the rules of the animal transportation that are currently being discussed, the impending proposal on phasing out cages, or the EU's approach to animal disease prevention during today's meeting. Thank you all for joining this event today and for being here.
Dear colleagues, dear guests, dear Stefan, Since I will not be able to make the closing remarks, allow me to share a few more thoughts at the beginning of our event. I would like to welcome you all, together with Stefan, for this interesting and important event. I would like to thank the European Food Forum for organizing the event and for bringing together such a broad range of expertise from across the food supply chain, academia, civil society, and the institutions. And I'm proud that I have the privilege to co-host this event for the first time, actually, since I've joined the European Food Forum at the end of last year. This discussion comes at an important moment. The European Commission announced in its 2025 vision for agriculture and food its intention to revise and modernize the EU animal welfare framework, including measures related to the phase-out of cages. It has also launched extensive consultations with farmers, industry, civil society, and citizens. This shows that animal welfare is no longer an issue. It is now part of a wider European debate on sustainability, food production, competitiveness, consumer expectations, and the future of agriculture. Europeans care about animal welfare. Citizens expect food systems that are ethical, transparent, and sustainable. Farmers know that animal welfare is linked to animal health, product quality, and resilient production. Businesses across the supply chain are also adapting to changing expectations, often in a difficult economic environment. The key challenge is therefore not whether animal welfare standards should improve, but how this transition can be managed in a realistic, balanced, and workable way. Today's discussion touches on several connected issues: keeping higher welfare standards economically viable for farmers, avoiding disproportionate burdens on small producers and rural communities, maintaining the competitiveness of European agriculture and the level playing field with imports, and ensuring also that reforms are guided by science, evidence, and practical realities. Europe's agricultural sector is already under serious pressure. Farmers face rising costs, market volatility, geopolitical insecurity, climate challenges, and increasing regulatory demands. Many are concerned about their future viability, generational renewal, and the sustainability of rural communities. This social dimension is essential. Behind every agricultural transition are people, farmers, workers, families, and entire rural regions. A successful transition must therefore also be socially fair and must not leave smaller producers or vulnerable regions behind. At the same time, we cannot ignore society's expectations regarding the treatment of animals in our food system. Policymakers have a responsibility to respond in a credible, balanced, and pragmatic way. The objective should not be to create divisions between farmers and civil society or between competitiveness and welfare. The real task is to identify policies that are ambitious but implementable, policies that support gradual transition, encourage innovation, provide predictability for businesses, preserve rural cohesion, and maintain public trust. We are seeing also growing debate in areas such as fur farming, where ethical, welfare, public health, and economic considerations increasingly intersect. The Fur-Free Europe Citizens Initiative recent EFSA assessments and national bans or phase-out measures in several member states show how rapidly expectations are evolving. I focus a bit on that because this is an issue where we work together with Niels as well. And my country has also made important steps in banning it. In my view, there are three principles that should guide our discussion. First, policymaking must remain evidence-based with robust scientific analysis, proper impact assessment, and realistic evaluation of costs, timelines, and consequences across the supply chain. Second principle should be fairness and level playing field. Considerations are essential, and if European producers are expected to comply with higher standards, imported products must also be considered in this. And third, the transition must be inclusive and collaborative. Farmers, retailers, industry scientists, animal welfare organizations, consumers, and policymakers all have a role to play. I hope today's exchange will contribute to a more pragmatic debate, one that moves beyond polarization and focuses on workable solutions. Europe has often shown that high standards and competitiveness can go hand in hand when policy is designed carefully and in partnership with stakeholders. Achieving this balance is essential if we want policies that are economically, socially, and ethically sustainable. Let me conclude by thanking all speakers and participants for joining us today and for contributing their expertise. I look forward to a constructive and insightful debate. Thank you very much.
Thank you to our two co-hosts, and you've touched upon points that will be discussed today with our very good panels. And moving on to the first panel, we'll have Lucy Carouet, Deputy of the Head of Unit of Animal Welfare at DG Sant in the European Commission, and MEP Niels Fuglsang from S&D and President of the Animal Welfare Intergroup, to take us through and discuss the legislative framework and the current situation and future prospects of animal welfare. Our panelists will take us through each one around 10 minutes, and then we will open for a Q&A after that. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Lucy.
Thank you, Ines, and good afternoon, everyone. So to discuss animal welfare and competitiveness, I wanted to start to go back to the roots of why we have animal welfare rules at the EU level in the first place. The EU is first and foremost a single market, and you know that the single market has been a very powerful element of growth, competitiveness, and makes the EU attractive. You can see it now with countries like UK, Norway, or Switzerland wanting to actively participate in the single market, even without being EU member states. And animal welfare rules were established originally in the 70s to ensure the proper functioning of the single market. It started with the first directive on stunning before slaughter in the 70s, shortly followed by a directive on transport, and then in the 80s, 90s, directives on farm welfare. We don't have a direct legal basis to regulate animal welfare in the treaty. We, in fact, have an Article 13 of the treaty that tells us we should take full account of animal welfare when we regulate agriculture, the single market, research, transport, and etc. So all of the EU pieces of legislation that we have today on animal welfare have as a legal basis agriculture and single market. So you see that this is really our roots. Progressively, we have moved away from directive towards regulation. We have the slaughter and transport directives have become regulations. The most recent EU piece of legislation that was adopted on the welfare of dogs and cats is a regulation. The caveat that I have to mention is that except for the transport and killing, where the room for member states' additional action is limited, most of our EU animal welfare rules are minimum harmonization. So it's not a full harmonization. It leaves leeway for member states to adopt stricter national rules. And this is understandable since we have, generally speaking, high citizens' expectations on animal welfare across the EU, but with variation across member states. I can tell you, my family-in-law is German, and I can tell you I'm French. The citizens' expectations in France on animal welfare are not the same as those in Germany. There are differences. You can notice it even in your daily life. And if you take other countries, you can see even bigger differences. So this is normal, that member states want to retain some room for national legislation. That being said, if you look at the bigger picture, the single market in general, we have the Letta report, the Draghi report, all tell us we have to become more competitive, we have to deepen our single market. And recently, the Commission has adopted a communication on its new rule book, and follows up on this advice by saying we will try to basically reinforce our single market, including by the way we draft legislation, the way we also enforce them, monitor what member states do, and so on and so forth. So you have to keep these two aspects in mind, the need to have a very good functioning of the single market, but in the animal welfare area, it will I think be quite complicated to achieve full harmonization. We have heard it already, animal welfare investments comes with a cost. So any animal welfare rules has to strike a balance. That has always been the case. We start with scientific advice. Now, today we have the EFSA, the European Food Safety Agency authority, who is there to provide us with the latest science on animal welfare, but it's only a starting point. We always have to bring in, and this is the role of the Commission, I'm working in the Commission, to bring in elements of assessments of costs and economic, environmental, social impacts of measures to balance the measure that we propose in the legislative proposal, so that this is feasible and sustainable for the operators and represents, let's say, an avenue to have a good functioning of the single market with competitiveness while taking account of animal welfare. So we need to look at the costs, have sufficient transitional period to allow farmers to adapt and make best use of their current structure, and measures to accompany the farmers. Best practice guidelines, research and development is playing a role, but of course we need to look also at funding. When we talk about funding, there is of course our main instrument, which is the Common Agricultural Policy. The CAP is already today allowing funding for animal welfare measures. In eco schemes, in the second pillar, you have these possibilities and member states are using it. And we have already in the current CAP invited member states to focus their support on transition away from cages, for example, in the laying hen sector. This will remain the case in the future MFF. You have in the Commission proposal for the future MFF the notion that member states will have to foresee funding for animal welfare. So they will, of course, have some leeway of deciding, but the intention is there. There is also the possibility to envisage state aid, and some member states have done it. There are rules, of course, at EU level for defining under which conditions you can have state aid, but we receive regularly some requests for the Commission to allow certain state aid in the animal welfare area, and we have already validated a number of them. There is a role for public procurement. Last year, the GRC has updated its guidelines on sustainable public procurement for food. This is a guideline, it's not mandatory. Member states have available these updated guidelines, which do contain some criteria related to animal welfare and in particular to cage-free systems. We also have to look at other actors, such as the European Investment Bank, who also has, since several years already, integrated animal welfare criteria in selecting basically the investments or the preferential access to loans for farmers that they facilitate with their activities. And of course, the EIB can be a very important actor in accompanying the Commission's proposal for that will come out at the end of the year. And finally, and this was said also in the introduction, we need to act on trade. We will not have a competitive farming sector if our rules don't apply to imports. And this is why, indeed, in the vision, we have mentioned that this legislative revision would be the occasion to introduce equivalent measures at imports after an assessment of WTO compatibility and an assessment of impacts for the third countries concerned. And so this is part of our ongoing impact assessment. We are also working at multilateral level. You should not forget that we have international animal welfare standards set out by WOHA, the World Organization for Animal Health. These standards exist, they are regularly revised, and the EU is actively participating in this revision so that these international standards are as close as possible to EU standards so that we have a reference level. That being said, you have to keep in mind that we cannot exactly translate our EU standards into the WOHA standards. That's just not feasible. If you take transport, for example, we are indeed now discussing the Council and Parliament are reviewing the regulation on transport. You cannot expect that the OHA will copy-paste the EU standards completely. OHA has to agree with all the member countries that are members, and they will necessarily be a bit less specific, which means less strict in practice if you are more generic in your wording. So now let me explain a little bit how we work. Our unit is indeed responsible for many of the topics that have been mentioned, transport, fur animals, but I think the main topic that we are covering today is now farm animal welfare, the farm animal welfare revision. For this part, we have performed a fitness check in 2022. My colleague expert is here. And now we are in the process of doing an impact assessment. We have launched a call for evidence in the summer last year. We have an external contractor who has been working very actively, has done targeted surveys, a series of interviews, workshop, and they are almost at the end of this activity of collecting views and evidence and feedback. There has been a public consultation in the winter last year with almost 200,000 replies. We have used a lot the EU Animal Welfare Platform, and Miguel Angel has been an active participant, to steer some debate on different topics, and this will continue. We have again a meeting in June, and we had a big conference organized by the Danish presidency in December last year that also contributed to the reflection. So a very, very active period of consultation and data gathering in the last year. Now we are at a period where we are consolidating all this data, maturing our impact assessment analysis, and having internal reflection and decision-making processes on the scope and the measures that will be selected for the animal welfare proposal that we are preparing for the end of this year, and that should take a sector-by-sector approach. As you know, the Commission has also planned to adopt a livestock strategy in July this year. So, and this livestock strategy will contain some element on animal welfare. So there are many things in the pipeline, so to say, not to mention the communication on fur, indeed. So I think I will stop there because I'm probably at 10 minutes. But the main message is that at EU level, animal welfare rules are there for the purpose of ensuring a good functioning of the single market. And if we don't modernize them, we are losing this because member states have adopted plenty and plenty of national rules. This creates a fragmentation of the single market. And if we don't update them regularly, we are not keeping up to these developments and keeping, let's say, a minimum level of harmonization that ensures a minimum level of level playing field for operators. And we would lose our most precious asset, which is the internal market. That would be my message.
Thank you so much, Lucy. And we segue to the European Parliament. We segue now to the European Parliament with MEP Niels Ferguson. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you to the organizers of this meeting. I think it's great that we get to discuss the topic of animal welfare here in the European Food Forum. And thank you. So thank you, Stefan, and thank you, Christian, for that. And thank you also to Lucy. I think your words are clear. I agree. I would say we agree in the Animal Welfare Intergroup very much with your statement that we need some strong minimum standards in the European Union. We have a common agricultural policy. We have an internal market. We trade food products, and our farmers, of course, also compete against each other. So I think it's natural that we have some strong minimum standards. We, of course, would say that they're not nearly as strong right now as they should be. Which to some extent forces our farmers into a competition of providing cheap products. And some of the things that you compete on has the result that you actually see lower animal welfare standards than we would like. I can tell you that, so I'm, as mentioned, heading the Intergroup for Animal Welfare in this parliament. It's a group with 100 members from different political groups. We have actually members from all the political groups except the ESN, but we across political in this, and there's a reason for that. It is that animal welfare is something that you can find supporters and you can find adversaries also across the political spectrum. But you can find it does that I'm S&D, that I'm a social democrat doesn't mean you cannot from that fact know if I want to do something ambitious here or not. And I think the same goes for EPP and other political groups. So there are many different opinions across in the political groups on animal welfare. So from our point of view, and I can of course not speak for all our members because they will have different points of view, but I think I will point out some of the themes in our discussions in the European Parliament, and I think the picture that we have of the situation is a little bit more gloomy than the one we've just heard, than the perspective that we just heard. We think that we are in many ways in an animal welfare crisis in the European Union, in spite of some of the good initiatives. And I think, Lucy, you were clear on some of the good initiatives that's going on, and of course we recognize that. At the same time, you have seen in many countries a development towards a more and more efficient production, and I'm saying that in quotation marks, efficient, because I think that what we've seen is that we want to produce more and more as cheap as possible, with as little input as possible, with as much output as possible. I can look at my own country, Denmark, where we've gone quite far in that direction, but I think Denmark is certainly not the only example. That we want to, for example, if you look at our pig production, we want to have as much meat as possible, as cheap as possible. So we've bred our sows so that they have as many piglets as possible. So a wild boar sow would have 5, 6, 7 piglets when it gives birth. A Danish sow today has 18, 20 in average. That means that you get a lot of piglets, obviously, and you get a lot of meat production, but you also get a lot of these piglets dying because they're so weak. Basically, 1/4, 25%, they just die of the Danish piglets, either in they're born deaf, or many of them are so weak because the sow does not have enough capacity to breastfeed them all, and they're so weak. So if she lies on them, they will die very fast. It's around 30,000. We have a lot of pigs, and we're a small country. We have 6 million people. We produce 30 million pigs every year, 40 million if you count those who die in the process. So it's around 30,000 piglets die every day in Denmark in this process, and because they're so weak. So what we do to compensate here is that we fixate the sow. So we make sure we have a cage so she cannot turn around. So we try to prevent that she moves too much to lie on the piglets. And so we save some of them, but of course, many weeks in a row, she has to lie, not being able to move, turn around, not being able to build a nest for the piglets, not being able to act in a natural way, basically. And of course, this has dire consequences for animal welfare. And this, of course, doesn't only happen in Denmark. We've gone pretty far, and we're certainly not a role model when it comes to animal welfare. But I think you'd find these examples in many countries across the European Union. We transport them. I mean, we're discussing the transport situation, transport regulation. Now we have difficulties finding any agreement on that. We're very far from each other in the European Parliament. Over half of the 30 million that we produce in Denmark, we put on animal transports to other countries while they're alive, and most of them is what you'd call long animal transports, more than 8 hours. I rented a car and followed an animal transport from Denmark to Italy, 22.5 hours. 650 pigs from Denmark, 3 months old, don't get any food on the way. They are in 5 layers in a large truck. they're lying in their own excrements on top of each other because there's so many. It's really not something very decent. So I think we've gone way too far when it comes to making this production efficient in the bad sense of the word. Well, you produce a whole lot of stuff pretty cheap compared to what you were able to some years ago, but it has some pretty nasty consequences too. And I think you can, I'm not going to go through all the animals, but you can look at the chicken production and other kinds of production. The chicken production where you breed them so you have so many chickens that are not able to walk properly because they grow so fast that their bones can't take it anymore. So I think it's really a crisis, and we need to do much more. On top of that comes that it's difficult to do something at the EU level. I appreciate that the Commission works on good initiatives, but you have in the European Parliament, you have since the 2024 election, you have a lot of political groups not wanting to do anything on this. Actually, I think the proposal on transport from the European Commission is not nearly ambitious enough, but you have colleagues in the European Parliament who says actually it's way too ambitious. The proposal on transport says, well, today you can transport pigs for 24 hours, then you have to take a break. The proposal says no, that has to be 21 hours. But now my colleagues here in the House says, well, it has to be more than 24 hours. We want to take it in the opposite direction. So we want to decrease the standards and make even longer animal transport. And that is, of course, because, well, when I was elected in 2019, you had the climate election. You had a focus in general on sustainability, and that has changed enormously since 2024. The 2024 was not a climate election. If I should call it anything, I would say it was a tractor election, because it was not Greta Thunberg or climate activists who set the agenda this time. It was farmers protesting outside Parliament saying you've gone too far in this or that direction. It had a big consequence on the agenda of politicians here in this House. So we have some challenges on the good side. Now I've said a lot of gloomy things here. On the good, on a more positive note, I think it is true that more and more, and I think you mentioned it, Christian, more and more people care about animal welfare. You actually see when you make the Eurostat surveys that more and more people say this is important for them. You also have potentially some very important initiatives from the European Commission, in the European legislative process. You have the animal transport file being negotiated now. It's very difficult, but you have some promises from the European Commission that, Lucy, I think you mentioned several of the analysis that you made, but we know that the European Commission has said that we need to do something about the cages. So when I talk about fixation of sows, you could also talk about battery cage hens. And I think that's the first thing, as I understand it, that you will look at in the European Commission. I look forward to that. If we could do something to stop that, to phase that out, having cages for hens that spend the whole life in a cage, that's obviously not very good animal welfare. So if we could do something here, for the first time, we have an animal welfare commissioner who has the job of both implementing, enforcing, and proposing new stuff that will increase animal welfare. So I think we have some momentum if you look at citizens' opinions, and if you look at the way the European Commission is structured now, and also the statements that has been given. I think we do have a chance to do something. And of course, good people like you, Lucy, in the European Commission, who I have no doubt you want to do something. So, but we have some job ahead, and quite a hard job ahead. So I'm happy that we have this discussion and we have the chance to reflect on it here. Thank you.
Okay, so now we have about 10 minutes, a bit less, for questions. So as per the briefing in the beginning, don't be shy. Who would like to ask questions to our two panelists? Ian, please introduce yourself and your organization. Thank you.
Yes, Ines, my name is Miguel Ángel Higuera. I'm veterinarian and I represent Copa Cogeca. I have a question also for you, because I'm surprised about the transport of the pigs coming from the Danish from Denmark for another countries. It's true that you're authorized your truck without the possibility to feed the animals, so neither in the water, and also that the Danish truck are not isolated, so the excrements go floor by floor. That it's true that you authorize this kind of truck in Denmark to transport the animals, because one of the reasons that we think that also we need a review of the animal welfare regulation is the difficult application that we have in our countries about the regulation in the transport. And I'm very surprised about your words. So it's so dramatic. So I would like to have also this information more deeper. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Yes, I mean, this was, I saw this with my own eyes, and I think I was not, so I rented a car with my team, and I followed this transport from the city Padborg in the southern part of Denmark to Verona in Italy, 22.5 hours. And many hours it was queuing on the German highway with the sun. It was in September, so you had around 34 degrees Celsius in the truck. Inside the truck we listened to some of the experts we have in Denmark. It was 28 degrees or 27 degrees outside, but they tell us that in the truck it's 7 degrees warmer because you have 650 pigs being stuffed together there. You could basically, when I get told that from some of the farmers I discussed with, that the pigs are sleeping when they're driving, and they may be some of the time, but when the truck is not driving, that we could hear the screams inside. They were stressed and they were biting each other, I assume because they were screaming very much. But as far as I know, and Lucy, maybe you know more about this, but I was not out to find someone who is breaching the law. I was trying to figure out what does the law allow. And as far as I know, you don't have to feed the animals during the 24 hours. You have to make sure they have water. There was a water system in the truck, of course, but according to the experts we talked with, if you have 650 pigs in a truck for 22 hours, you have to have a pretty massive amount of water if you don't fill on new water, which they didn't do. We followed it all the way. This is what we allow in Denmark. I don't think it's breaching the rules for the European Union, as far as I know. You can correct me if you have other opinions, but that's what's going on. This was just one truck, but we're exporting 15 million pigs in these kind of transports every year.
Thank you. Lucy, do you want to add anything? Okay, good. Any other questions? Yes.
Hi, my name is Laura Schönmeier, and I'm from the German food retail sector. And I have a question for you, Lucy Caroux. You said that the consumers' expectations concerning animal welfare in France differ from those in Germany. Could you go into a little bit more detail? Can you say something about it? Like the German are more aware of this, or it's the opposite? The French people are very aware of animal welfare, or I'm very curious about it.
Sorry, this was more a personal comment, not a commission statement. So don't take it as a commission statement, please. No, it was just really just in my daily life. I observed indeed that the level of awareness on animal welfare, I felt it is higher in Germany, and there are many more labels related to animal welfare in the supermarkets in Germany than what I can see in France. So that was just a comment like this, just to illustrate with a bit of a personal touch. But I think we can all see that, of course, a citizen in Sweden probably is more, has more an attention to this than I don't know, a citizen in Bulgaria. But no, I don't want to make generalization. Just to say there are differences. And we have to be aware of that and to acknowledge it. That was just my message.
Thank you. We have time to squeeze one more question. So, John, yes, please.
Thanks. Yeah, Jonathan Zander from Compassionate World Farming. I also have a question for you, Ms. Caroux. just as we are, of course, expecting the proposal from you by end of the year, then of course more soon there's going to be the livestock strategy, and of course there's the opportunity to have like a longer time frame. Would that be an opportunity, since there will also be some elements on animal welfare, to have like a more concrete timeline for all the sectors, etc., on when which proposals will come? Just would that be an opportunity, the livestock strategy now?
You will have to wait that it's published. I'm sorry, I cannot answer the question right now.
Always good. Do we have a question? Or good, but it's a good point also that animal welfare goes beyond DG Sante, and as you mentioned, also to other DGs, and it's pollinated across different sectors. So at NDG, the Commission. So I think there's no burning questions, so we will segue to our next panel. But first, we thank our two panelists. Lucie, Niels, thank you so much. Good. And now we go into our next panel. Here we will talk about making the transition to higher welfare successful. So I'm very happy that the panel has representations from across the supply chain, but also actors that are invested in the supply chain. So we have research, NGOs, the retailers, we have a company, processor or integrated company, and we have also the primary production. So we will have today with us Professor Dr. Bas Rodenburg. He's a professor of animal welfare from the Utrecht University. We'll have Amélie Legrand. She's the global head of research on the food business at Compassion World Farming. And then we have Francesco Tramontin, which is the VP for Global Public Affairs at Ferrero. We have Laura Schönmeier. She's the Agricultural Policy and Animal Welfare Officer of the German Food Retail Association, representing also Eurocommerce here in the EU. And finally, in Brussels. And finally, we have Miguel Angel Higuera. He's the chair of the Animal Health and Welfare Working Group at Copa Cojecta and also director of Ampro Agavor. So I will run these panels that each of the panelists, and I will call your names, of course, will introduce a bit the topic from their perspective and bring a bit of the knowledge to the table. And then we will go into also a Q&A. We have a bit more for this panel, but I will, as you know, will hint if we are running over time to make sure that everyone has a fair amount of time to put their points forward. We'll start with Professor Bas, and I think you have some slides also to accompany your presentation. So if we can pull up the slides. Thank you.
Yeah,
there you go.
thank you.
The floor is yours.
Yeah, regarding a successful transition towards higher welfare systems, two aspects really stand out for me. And the first, and it's probably not surprising from an animal welfare scientist, is the need for animal welfare monitoring systems to know where we currently stand and also to monitor progress when systems are changing. On the slide, you can see the European project A-WISH. And in that project, academic partners work together with industry to set up welfare monitoring systems at the slaughterhouse. Data are collected through a central data platform and can be used to monitor progress. For instance, if you move to the next slide, regarding the monitoring of footpad dermatitis in broilers over subsequent flocks. So here you can see an anonymized farm where the orange bars represent the footpad scores of different flocks and the line represents sort of the development over time. And for instance, you can look at if you have welfare improving initiatives like changes in stocking density or enrichment or litter quality. Do you see an improving trend in this indicator at the slaughterhouse? Of course, this is at the end of the animal's life, so then mainly the information to improve the system is for the next flock of animals. But if you look at the next slide, please. Currently also there's the European Partnership on Animal Health and Welfare, and that also includes initiatives on on-farm animal welfare monitoring. This is a very large network of European researchers. At the most recent meeting, they counted over 1,500 scientists that are now involved from 85 institutions from 24 different countries, working on a range of topics around animal health and animal welfare. And as part of that European partnership, if the next slide, please. I'm leading the Eyes and Ears project as one of the internal projects, and there we focus with a large number of European partners on automatic on-farm monitoring of animal health and welfare. And that is still very much developing and very early days, but it helps a lot that we can share experiences and that we can make progress with different people, for instance, working on broilers or on pigs or on dairy cattle, moving together and making use of the knowledge that's already available in industry collaborations, but also from academic approaches. Also within the European partnership, standardized data collection protocol is being developed and a central European platform for animal welfare data together with EFSA. And if we move in that direction, it is also important that we not only include indicators of negative welfare, like wounds or feather damage, but also indicators of positive welfare, such as the occurrence of specific behaviors or vocalizations. To make that possible, digitization and automatic monitoring systems are, of course, key to be able to monitor that type of traits. The second crucial point is that we need to make this transition together with all the different stakeholders involved. And some of the other speakers also have touched upon this. If we really want to see change, we also need to support farmers to make a transition. The market needs to be there and needs to compensate the higher production costs, and the changes that are requested also need to be practically feasible and sensible. In my mind, a positive example of this is the transition towards cage-free housing systems for laying hens in many European countries. Here, the 10 to 15% higher cost price is generally compensated by the higher market price, and many retailers have switched to selling only cage-free table eggs. You move to the next slide, please. In the Netherlands, we are currently in the process of transitioning towards higher welfare systems. In the Dutch Animals Act in 2024, the 5 freedoms have been replaced by the 6 guiding principles for humane livestock farming that you can see here on the slide. And those principles place more emphasis on behavioral needs of farm animals, the species-specific behavior, the 5th principle, and also on positive experience of animals, which is the top of the pyramid in the figure. Dutch government, industry, retail, and also the Dutch Society for the Protection of Animals have signed a covenant to enable this transition in practice by 2040, focusing on aspects that are needed to enable this transition, like market legislation, building permits, etc. A central authority will be appointed to oversee that all partners make sufficient progress according to the covenant. Specific changes to the legislation for housing and management of each animal species are currently being proposed to Parliament and will likely be confirmed by summer 2026. And the focus is on meeting the behavioral needs of each species and on banning routine mutilations, such as tail docking in pigs. A lot is possible when all stakeholders work together. We've seen that in the Netherlands in recent years, also with the transition to slower growing broiler chickens for the Dutch market. Now, all fresh broiler meat that is sold in the Dutch supermarket is from slower growing broilers. And the meat is sold under the Better Life label, making sure that the higher production costs can be recovered. I think that's a nice example of how things can move forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you for keeping the time, Bas. So we move now to Amélie with from Compassion World Farming, please.
Thank you so much, Ines. And thank you to the EFF organizers as well for the invitation to participate. So on the first panel, we've heard about the European citizens calling for better welfare. So I wanted to, thanks for the slide, I wanted to start touching on that a little bit. So yes, it's very clear now that European citizens are calling for better welfare for farmed animals in Europe, including the end of the use of cages. So in addition to the 1.4 million EU citizens that supported the ECI and the cage age, the recent polls show overwhelming support to the ban on cages, in particular from the Eurobarometer and the European Bureau of Consumers. So I'm not going to bore you with polls results, but just a couple that I think are really telling. So the first one, as you can see on the slide, is that 9 in 10 EU citizens don't want animals to be kept in cages, 9 out of 10, and believe that animal welfare must be better protected in Europe than it is now, including through a cage ban. And similarly, and more recently, more than 190,000 European citizens responded to the Commission's public consultation on the modernization of animal welfare laws in Europe. And the vast majority, again, 99% of them, want to phase out cages in Europe and also want this to be applied to imported products. So I think that's very encouraging. Next slide, please. So unfortunately, cages are still widespread in Europe. Around 300 million animals are still kept in cages in Europe, including 36% of laying hens, 96% of breeding sows, 94% of farmed rabbits, and a large part of dairy calves, which are kept in individual crates. And the science is clear. There is abundant scientific evidence confirming that cages are severely detrimental to the welfare of those animals, including the latest scientific opinions from the European Food Safety Authority. And we recommend that cages should no longer be used for laying hens, breeding sows, quails, and ducks to protect the welfare of those species. So moving away from cages clearly means giving animals more opportunities to have better lives, to have more space to move around and express their highly motivated behaviors. Getting rid of cages is the first crucial step to protect the welfare of animals in Europe and to answer consumer and citizen demand. But it's also a significant investment, as we will hear, I'm sure, from the other panelists as well. It's a significant investment which will tie producers to a specific system for the next 15 years or more. So it is extremely important that investments that are made today are future fit, meaning that they protect the welfare of animals. They are, of course, economically viable for the farmers, and they are able to meet consumer expectations for higher welfare products. And some systems, even though they may be marketed as cage-free, are not future fit because they still allow some form of confinement and they still restrict animals' behavior and movements for a prolonged period of time, such as combination systems for laying hens or temporary crating systems for sows. So now I wanted to talk about companies. So many forward-thinking companies have already been responding to that consumer demand and have already anticipated those legislative changes by investing in future-fit systems, cage-free system ahead of a legislative ban. So this is extremely encouraging. And this is especially visible and true for laying hens, with now over 1,400 cage-free corporate commitments in Europe to date, including 900 of those already fulfilled, meaning that the animals on the ground are already benefiting from the commitments of those companies and are already cage-free. A large number of retailers have removed cages from their shelves, or rather eggs from caged hens from their shelves, sorry. For example, 100% of the eggs sold in Germany are now cage-free, 82% in France, and 59% in Poland. Other companies have made commitments to eliminate cages and crates for sows and for rabbits. And all those companies are not only showing leadership, but they are really demonstrating that the cage-free transition is possible at scale, is commercially viable, is already underway in Europe. A number of those companies are also actively calling for a ban on cages in Europe to ensure a level playing field where cage-free can become the baseline across Europe. And again, in the recent public consultation from the Commission, we can see that the majority of food businesses respondents were in favor of a phase out of cages in Europe across the species covered in the consultation. Because whilst voluntary progress is encouraging and is extremely important to stimulate the market in order to truly raise the bar for animals in Europe, we need more than those voluntary commitments. We need a comprehensive ban. We need a legislative framework for EU produced and imported products. So 5 years ago, as I've said, 1.4 million citizens called for an end to the cages. The EU now has a responsibility to deliver on that promise and introduce a harmonized legislative framework. And producers, we will hear about from producers after me, but producers need that legal certainty and that clarity and harmonized requirements across Europe to have the confidence to invest today in cage-free higher welfare systems. Without that, there is a real risk of stranded assets, especially for those early adopters who are moving ahead of the rest of the producers and already converting their existing systems without legislative certainty. And those harmonized requirements must be based on science, building on the latest recommendations from the EFSA to generally improve animal welfare. And finally, they must come with strong financial support mechanism to help farmers in their transition. Thank you. So the long-awaited EU-wide cage ban will help to create a fair, enforceable system that protects animals, supports farmers, and delivers what consumers increasingly expect. And this is our once-in-a-generation opportunity to transform how farm animals are treated in Europe and benefit animals, farmers, and consumers alike. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, from a company's perspective, we have Francesco, please.
Yeah, thank you. I don't have a presentation, but I will tag along also because I'm not an animal welfare expert, but I've had a lot to do with this. And it has to do with the slide you had, Amélie, with the companies. So when company advocate for legislation and the company take commitment is exactly for a common reason. That's one you mentioned, which has a lot to do with competitiveness. It's a level playing field, legal certainty, and then the chance that for every euro spent, wherever it's spent in the supply chain, and I'll get to that part, there's actually a bigger impact, which is given by scale of common system, common standards. And this I say it because, yes, today you have always this debate about do we help competitiveness with legislation or not. If you have a lot of logos on those papers, it is because we feel it helps our investment and it helps our competitiveness. So this is the common part. Now, the companies that you've seen there, which includes Ferrero, my company, are very different one from the other. So I will explain you what the dynamics are. So I think you'll hear from retailers afterwards. And the dynamics are completely different, linked as everything is linked in food, but the dynamics are completely different. So as Ferrero, we are a European, family-owned, large, mostly, but not only confectionery business. So for us, the impacts on farm are two when it comes to animal welfare. It's laying hens and obviously dairy cows. I mean, these are the two things. Now, in the big scheme of things of a company like ours, you have a lot of on-farm impact when you buy cocoa, hazelnuts, sugar, dairy, palm oil. I mean, the list of topics you have on your supply chain that you need to action is huge. And what you do as a company, more or less consciously, the bigger you are, the more you have a structured approach, is a materiality analysis of what's big to the company and where the company is big to something. Now, let me be a bit provocative. Animal welfare wouldn't show up as a material topic because, I mean, take eggs. I mean, we buy a sizable quantity, but we are not big to it. And in the big scheme of what we buy, it's not big to us. Yet, we do something about it. It's one most kind of fastest and black and white commitment we've taken, and I get to that, for example, on cage-free eggs. The reason is twofold. So on one side is it's a societal topic, which is unavoidable. People, Mr. Collett, you said it yourself, you ask them, they express a preference, which doesn't come with buying, but you know, the people around us, they absolutely don't compromise on something like that, as much as you ask them about human rights or other things. So it is on another level than other type of environmental impact. Again, whether we feel it or not within our business strategy. So this is one. The second one is more linked to the distribution of value. So if you do business in a certain way, and I'll get to, for example, the way we do it, which is not transactional, it's a very streamlined supply chain, integrated and generally speaking, long-term relationship with supplier of products. It comes into the conversation. So our supplier, who's deep into the topic, unlike us, they see the need of doing something. And so if you start a long-term, not transactional relationship, the interest in, let's call it co-investing, it's a bit of a simplification, it comes naturally embedded in the way you do long-term contracting. So there's two elements to it. Element, and at the end of the way, the way you do business with your suppliers, which again, in case of Ferrero, is pretty straight. We ask to do business in a certain way, build the traceability through our supply chain for all raw materials. So the cage-free commitments came that way. It's a request for suppliers to make it part of our business interaction, which comes with an element of premium rewards, but somehow is distributed and organic on the way to do business. And that actually generated the commitment because we saw the opportunity. So cage-free eggs were part of a supplier charter and part of a code of conduct with suppliers. And somehow the cost of it was embedded in a long-term relationship. I'm oversimplifying a little bit, but it's come. Where does legislation come? Is the last mile. So when you see things are progressing, then you see you can take a commitment and then actually having even an indication that the policy scenario will be an obligation for everybody, kind of help really move and do the last mile. Last mile we've made, I think the commitment we took in 2014, if I'm not wrong, it is like 3 years ago that we've done on cage-free, the full journey for Europe. We were 6% globally missing in Turkey and Mexico, so nothing to do with Europe, but again, having clear standards and at least an aspiration of going global with certain things allowed us with an investment. So we did invest money with the suppliers to actually cover 100%. So now this is eggs. Dairy is completely another story. Yeah, 1 minute. You don't have a standard. You lack clarity of what you need to do. And so the reality is you cascade through a supplier code the commitments, but it's harder to take commitments unless we get a similar view about where policy wants us to get us. And we don't have, this is my last remark, we don't have a consumer hook. So animal welfare will not be a differentiator for Ferrero products. So to your point, for other type of business, they are, and they may be, not for our products, which means needs to be part of those ways of working. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And as Francesco alluded to, now we go to Laura for the retailer perspective. So please, Laura, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. We can start directly on the second slide, please. So I'm try to keep it more short. I would like to share with you some practical insights for the German approach to how can we make the transition to higher animal welfare successful. And I would like to start with the core challenge. Across Europe, we can see strong public support for better animal welfare, but there's still a gap between what consumers say and how they actually buy in the market. At the same time, the farmers face significant challenges. They need to invest heavily in new housing systems, but often lack of economic certainty. And this leads to a fundamental problem. The transition to higher animal welfare is widely supported, but difficult to implement in practice. Policy alone and political support is not sufficient. So how do we align farmers, retailers, and consumers? Next slide, please. At first, a systemic perspective and approach is required. The transition to higher animal welfare cannot be solved by one actor alone. We need to align three key elements. Farmers who must be able to invest and have the long-term security to do so. Retailers who connect supply and demand while taking into account the consumer's willingness to pay a surplus price. And of course, these very consumers who ultimately make purchasing decisions in the market. And for a long time in the past, one critical element was a little bit missing, it's transparency. On the left side on the slide, you can see just a small selection of the various labels available just on the German market. Without transparency regarding the many existing labels, consumers cannot make informed choices and the market cannot function properly. Next slide, please. So in Germany, we have developed a coordinated approach that brings these elements together. It is based on two main instruments. It's the Initiative Tierwohl, Initiative Animal Welfare, and the Haltungsform. It's a scheme for uniform farm type labeling. And together, these instruments create financial support for farmers, clear market signals, and transparency for consumers. And this combination is key to enabling real change. Next slide, please. First, I would like to go a little bit more into detail about the initiative Tierwohl. It is a joint initiative by the food retail sector and the agricultural sector. It has many supporters, some of whom you probably know on the right side. It's an animal welfare standard with specific requirements for livestock farmers, verified notably through its own audit system. Since it started 10 years ago, the German retailers have invested more than 1.5 billion euros in a fund designed to support farmers in improving animal welfare. The mechanism was quite simple. Retailers provide funding and farmers receive payments when they implement the defined animal welfare measures. This helps to reduce the financial risk for farmers and creates a reliable foundation for investment. Today, the focus is on the transition from a funding mechanism to a purely market-based financing system. Next slide, please. And this is the second instrument I just mentioned, which ensures the transparency. The Haltungsform labeling system provides a simple and uniform way to communicate farming conditions to consumers. To make it simple, while the Initiative Tierwohl is a label, the Haltungsform integrates existing labels, existing animal welfare labeling into a systematic framework, making animal welfare standards visible directly at the point of sale. Importantly, it does not create a new program, but rather organizes existing standards into one clear framework. This helps consumers understand differences and supports more conscious purchasing decisions. Next slide, please. And I would like to use this next slide to make that point even clearer. The Haltungsform works like a coordinate system. Existing labels are categorized into defined farming system levels. Consumers can see what kind of animal husbandry is involved without being familiar with the requirements of a particular label. You can see it down like stall housing, stall plus place, outdoor climate, outdoor access, and organic standards. So the consumers can see easily the differences between the levels. Next slide, please. To summarize, once again, how the system is structured. If we look at the overall system, we can see a clear causal chain. Transparency through labeling leads to greater consumer awareness. This, in turn, increases the willingness to pay for higher standards. Retailers respond to this demand and actively promote higher animal welfare products. At the same time, financial mechanisms like the Initiative Tierwohl support farmers in making the necessary investments. The result is a functioning market for higher animal welfare. Next slide, please. Let me conclude with 5 takeaways. First, market-based mechanisms are essential. Second, transparency is a key driver of change. Third, retailers play a central role as system integrators. Fourth, farmers need economic security. And fifth, coordination is more effective than fragmentation. No development of isolated solutions. My final message for today is the transition to higher animal welfare will only succeed if it works economically across the entire value chain. Thank you.
Thank you. And I must say this panel is behaving so well. So prepare your questions because you will have a good time for questions. Last but not least, we go to Miguel for the producer's perspective. So please, Miguel, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Ines, and also thank you for European Food Forum for this invitation, and also for the MEPs that are hosting this event. That is absolutely very important for us, for producers, how also to move and improve the animal welfare for sure. For the perspective of the farmers, the welfare is one of our pillars. So I think when you took the decision to make a farmer, so it's because really you want to take care of the animals. So in the mind of all the farmers is not only the welfare, it's also to cover all the necessity of the animals. For the reason I think this event and also the debate of animal welfare is very important for us. How we can also try to improve the animal welfare, I would like also to move in 3 different ways. So that is very important for us, the 3 different factors. For the position of the farmers, for the position also of the market, and also for the position of the consumer citizens. For the farmers, what is the key elements if we would like also to improve the animal welfare in the farms? I think, and also I'm going to repeat something of the previous speakers, and I think it's very good because we are in the line. So the first one is the knowledge and also the scientific support. So everything that we would like to implement in the farms has to be not only a strong scientific base, also we need to be tested, proof, and improve in a farm levels, because one of the problems that we have found is when we are trying to implement some animal welfare that is based in a lab, sometimes in the farm doesn't work. So be sure that everything that we would like also to implement in the farm is sure that in the practical point of view is working. We have also example in the past that we have disasters for implementing the European regulations. So, and with the farm have a disaster in the farms, and this is absolutely a chaos. And the only reason is because they have changed something in the farms due to the regulations. It's something that really is absolutely frustrating for the farms. We don't want to do that. We, and the farmers, we would like to be sure that every single step that we have to do in the farms is based and is sure that is going to be work. Second is not only to provide and create the knowledge, it's also to share this information. So, because at the end, we know that there are some farmers that they have more qualities, and these farmers also can teach another farmers to be improved. And we see that the credibility and also the access to the new information is better farmer to farmers. The farmers believe and the farmers trust in another farmer where they do it. Why? Because we, for the practitioner point of view, and I also as veterinarian, we know that also the daily based practice is a key element. So how we can improve and share this knowledge in the farmers is a key element to realize that the other farmers, that also better animal welfare can be done in the farm and also is working. Another element for the vision of the farmers, and also as said before by Emily, is the protect to the forerunners. So there are farmers that are in advance, that are making new investments, that are trying to open new possibilities in animal welfare. And if we are not able to protect them, we are also to block new development. I mean, for example, when we are talking about the free farrowing and also the square meters, so there are some farmers that they are also making best with different square meters because we have no regulation. Right now, these farmers are absolutely scared what is happening with these farms. They are working during 5, 7, 10 years with this system of farms, and maybe the future regulations say that you needed 0.1 more square meter that you are working with. So I think we have to protect those farmers that are also making things by their own, and I try to improve the animal welfare. Second aspect is, we were speaking about the farmers, about the market. We must speak about the market. One of the things that you also, some of the speakers said before, is the stability of the market, the stability of the time. We have also regulation. The regulation has to keep in the time. For the farmers, it's so difficult to change the farms. So when we make any works and we change the farms, we have to know that this change is going to have a little bit time to be realistic and also to comply with the amortization period of these farms. So some of the sector regarding the pigs and also the laying hens, we have 12, 15 years ago, a new regulation that have been changed. Right now we are thinking in another one. So at the end, we have this stability. The second pillar for the market is also, well, that is the competitiveness. So the European Union also need to trade with another countries. We have also free trade agreements. And also there are absolutely a huge interest for our competitors to export products for Europe because we are in the target of the most of the countries that are produce food products in different conditions. For this reason, and also regarding the words of Lucy, how also how to have the complement and also the regulation about the imported of the product is absolutely clear. But not only when we are talking about the imported product, it's also because we are losing the competitiveness when we are talking about the export. Our products have not the same price that the others, and we are losing the market. We are losing the market directly because, of course, our production cost is higher than the other. The third aspect talking about the market is the time, and also as telling before, also for Lucy, when we are talking about the regulation and also implement it, we need time for the farmers to be sure what is the work, what is the action that they have to take in the farms, to be sure that they are going to do in the proper and the correct way. So the correct and appropriate time is quite important. The last aspect for the market, and also has been taken, is the financial resources. How we can also help to the farmers to face this new change in the animal welfare. All the change, and I think all the speakers are agree, making that it is an incredible invest, increase the production cost. So this needs some kind of support. We are not agree that this support can to have to the CIP because the CIP have a very small budget right now. If we would like also to improve the animal welfare in Europe, is needed an additional and a specific budget for that. And last but not least, we have been speaking about the vision of the farmer, the market, and also for the society, what are the money we are produce our products for our consumers. We really know what the consumer knows. And also the consumer, it changed a lot. The consumer that we have today is not the same consumer that we have even 6 months ago. We have right now the situation of the war. We have the situation of the energy. Right now, the consumer are moving the necessity right now every single day in our products, and we are selling. Right now, of course, because the situation that we have, one of the better drivers that we have is the price. Unfortunately, I think you have speaking of for an ideal and fantastic consumer. I think, and I would like 400 million of ideal consumer in the European Union. Unfortunately, not. Unfortunately, we are here and represent all the consumer, not the ideal that we have. And unfortunately, there are consumers that are asking for prices. We have to be provided and have product for everyone, but to be sure that the consumer is changed. And we know that the animal welfare right now for the consumer are not in the top of the priorities. We have to do that. For the when we were speaking about that also, for the communication between the the producers and also the chains, and also for the consumer, the labeling can be a very good option for sure. The labeling, how we can also inform the consumers how the producers are doing it. We are also in the way that the labeling has to be voluntary, because at the end, if the labeling in animal welfare is something that's mandatory, the standard of animal welfare start in the labeling products. So there are not any possibility to have an additional price for a mandatory labeling, because at the end, the mandatory labeling is the same that the regulation, and we have with the basis of the regulation, there are no possibility to increase and transmit the cost of the production. Why? Because of course, we need to be sure, as also the colleague said, that all the chains are involved, and also this increase of the cost of the production that we have in the farm due to the animal welfare is compensated for the market. And last but not least, is not a, maybe not is a factor, but it's the consequence of the animal welfare, and we have to be sure about that, because we know it, and everybody you know it. Increase the requirement of animal welfare is going to restructure the production in Europe, and you know it. All the requirement in animal welfare are affecting independently about the different size of the farms. There are small, medium farms that impact of the new regulation are higher, and the others that are not the same one, because of course they have another possibilities. So animal welfare are going to our livestock sector concentrate in largest company, and we are going to reduce the small and medium farmers. This is a real consequence that I don't know, and also we have to consider in our debates that is going the reaction of the market, because not all the farmers have the possibility to invest in animal welfare. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Miguel. A good concluding contribution with some maybe different controversial points. So I hope that spikes a bit the discussion and the questions. So in interest of the spirit of the forum, I'll open the floor first to questions. Also, each panelist can also raise their points from other panelists' statements. So, online as well. Everyone is very shy today. Looking for the long weekend. Good. Well, I will advance maybe one question for the panelists, because we are here in Brussels, right? And we have at least the European Parliament and the Commission here in the room as well. We also know that the different presidencies of the Council, to a certain extent, look to animal welfare. So some of you have alerted to it in your statements, but if you had to have a statement towards the EU, towards the policymakers, probably, you know, given the fact that there is an animal welfare legislation brewing, as Lucy has alerted to in the Commission, what would be your main asks or your main points to look out for when building a new animal welfare legislation? And this is for all of you. So from research, NGO, company and retailer side and producers. Anyone would like to take that? Amélie, please.
Thank you, Ines, for a really good question. Well, I've alluded, in fact, to several points earlier in my introduction, but I think what is very urgent at the moment is to have these proposals being tabled, because I think several of us have flagged, many producers are waiting to make these investments and are lacking the legal certainty, the clarity on what to invest in. That goes for free-faring systems. Indeed, what pen size, what pen design should I choose for my new system? We work with many producers and companies, and we hear that a lot, that they are holding on making those very important investments, because indeed they are waiting for that legal certainty to make sure that they will meet the future requirement when it comes to the ban on cages. So that's probably our first and most important call on the urgency of having those proposals tabled. The second one is the need to rely on science. Obviously, I think many of us have also mentioned it, while taking, of course, into consideration the practical aspects and the economic aspects, obviously, coming from the impact assessment. But we need to ensure that those investments really meet the welfare needs of the animals and also consumer expectations for higher welfare, so that, as I've said earlier, they are future fit. And again, like the example that I think, Miguel, you took on laying hens, where we went from barren cages to enriched cages, and now hopefully a full ban on cages. We want to avoid repeating that situation again, where investments are made in systems that represent an improvement, but not sufficient improvement. And then farmers and producers may have to reinvest again after a few years. And that's just not possible from an economical point of view, obviously. And of course, I think many of us have said it already. So the importance of having a level playing field, so ensuring that those rules apply to products in Europe for harmonization across member states, but also to imported products to protect farmers from being undercut by lower standards products. I think that would be our key points. Thank you.
Laura, I saw you shaking your head.
Okay. I have just like another perspective. For the German food retail sector, we say ambitious realism. So we need to make an improvement, but step by step. I see the problem that reinvestments are something that shouldn't take place, but I see consumers who want maybe higher animal welfare, but are not able to pay the surplus price. And we can't forget this point. It is what it is, yeah. And so the crisis and war and whatever across Europe enforce this. And so we need to make like small steps with small improvements that build like a small surplus price. So the consumer is can take like a little bit time to be familiar with the new price for the new level of farming. I don't know if it's if you can understand what I mean, but I cannot say, okay, these farming conditions are now much better, but you have to pay the double price, and the consumers cannot pay for it. This is just not realistic. It's I think the German food retail sector is a key driver for improvement, and the expectations from the consumers are high, but the willingness to pay the price are low. So we must put these facts together and look for a solution which combines the both of the factors. Yeah, so it's I don't want to say this is not right what you said. Absolutely not. From my personal perspective, I absolutely agree. I just see the consumers in my daily work and the willingness to pay for it.
And Bas, if I'm not wrong, on the laying hens project, better practices, you looked a bit, you meaning the project looked a bit into the cost. So what was your take from that on the science perspective? And I see Miguel, you also want the floor afterwards, yes.
Yeah, I mentioned the cost price increase of 10 to 15%. If you look at the countries like Netherlands, Germany, Denmark, where the movement towards cage-free was already earlier, you see that they're able to also realize a higher market price. So that in that sense, the transition was also economically successful. You have to realize there, of course, that the retailers decided to go cage-free, so the consumer does not have a choice. But in that sense, it did not impact also the sales of shell eggs. Maybe if I can immediately also add to your general question, I think my response would be quite close to Amelie's, also from the scientific field. There is a real urgency also to update the legislation to the latest scientific knowledge. Also, the EFSA opinions were prepared for all the different species. If you take the laying hen example, the directive is from 1999. That's a long time ago. So in that sense, yeah, it does make sense to make progress there. And of course, yeah, we all see the current challenges in the economy, and of course we need to think about those and to take those into account in some way. But yeah, from a scientific perspective, that should not stand in the way of also updating the legislation according to the most recent scientific conclusions.
Thank you, Miguel.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Ines. It's a critical question about how we can also move. For sure, we depend, and also we need also to monitorize every day the consumer, because at the end is going to be the driver about everything of the changes that we have to do. The changes in the farms has to be in a very long period. So for this reason, also as Copa Cogeca, we have this internal debate about what is our position for the future in animal welfare. We have a very strong debate inside also to arrive to the conclusion that we, as Copa Cogeca and also in the Working Party of Pig Meat, we want also to finish, for example, for the cages in the south with some requirements, because at the end is needed the time, is needed also what is the guidelines, as Amelie said. So some of the farmers are asking, okay, if I would like also to make something different in animal welfare, what is going to be the requirements to be sure that in the future the requirement that I'm doing right now will be complied with the future regulations. So there are a lot of questions of that. Unfortunately, and I would like to repeat one crucial question, is the animal welfare. And also, if we have animal welfare regulation, is going to be the most powerful driving to the change of the production in Europe, because most of the farmers are asking for time. Asking for time. For what are they asking for time? And you know, as farmer, it's asking for time for close the farm. No, for to rebuild the farm, for close the farm. They are asking for time to finish as farmers due to the animal welfare regulation. So the animal welfare regulation is going to put the final dog for most of the farming in Europe. For this reason, it's clear that the concentration is going to be there. Depending on the balance of the regulation, of the balance of the situation of the farmers, we are going to be able to still produce affordable price for the European consumers, because the most important is to be sure that we are going to produce food for our consumers, and also to be sure that the food security is guaranteed in Europe. So why? Because the huge interest to import products coming from animal production for the third countries is something of the key points of the most important companies global the world. I'm in touch with all the most important companies in Brazil and US and ASA, and also in China, that they know that in the future, the consumer, when the high value and high capacity is going to be in Europe. So be sure that the different step that we are doing is in a very balanced and appropriate way. Why? Because we have to rebalance another time and equilibrate the farmers, the companies, and the consumers. Thank you.
Thank you, Miguel. Yes, please, Francisco.
Maybe to add, or I mean, Miguel, you said this is going to be transformational. We've seen it with other type of legislations that probably you publish the legislation or you're about to, it doesn't stop there. And it's about the infrastructure you build to inform those elements. So surely it's realistic to think you invest once and it's done because the regulations say so. I mean, this is, I think, what you were saying. But yeah, the point is you kind of need a certain degree of visibility. That feedback loop is built through an administrative structure, which involves member states, involves the private sectors and farmers, that basically helps the Commission of Authorities takes informed decisions. Some of this will be political about where to invest and how. What we've seen with a lot of sustainability legislation, let me call it like that, is that you kind of set the standard and then everything should work out through guidance, Q&As, and this destroys the process because it politicizes technical topics. So I think that's going to be your greatest pitfall in this, and risk undermining the process, even the process of adoption. I think that's a learning of the past few months that should be avoided here, given this is such a big priority. And then let me get to the consumer. I mean, there should not be consumer choice on sustainability negatives. I think this is a fundamental piece. If you start overplaying the avoidance of something that should have been there in the first place, you destroyed food culture. Consumer choose on positive elements you add. So I think it's very good to see that on animal welfare policies, you reference to that. There's been an evolution. Some of the negatives and some of the positives. I think that's part of really bringing this to another level. Back to the negatives, they should be dealt with by legislation with due time, due processes, and the right incentive for investments.
Interesting points. Pausing there. Questions from the room now that there is a discussion, please.
Oh, thank you a lot for including animal health in the discourse, Professor Rodenberg. And for the others that participated to the discussion, my question is, I'm Irene from MSC Pharmaceutical Company. We do animal health and human health, so One Health company. And my question to all the participants to the discussion is, how do you think animal health is part of animal welfare? Because for us, it's obviously fundamental. And how do you think it's impacting as well competitiveness? And if it's actually a part of your research or your studies? Yeah, thank you.
Who wants to take the question first? Go, Miguel.
I can be the first for sure, no problem at all. So thank you for the question also, because it's a crucial one. Because when we are talking about the animal welfare, we think also in animal health. So we can consider that an animal have animal welfare and the animal is correct and appropriate care without the health. The key aspect when we are talking about the animal health is that regarding another kind of business, they invest in animal health always, or 99% of the times, is going to improve the productivity, is going to improve the farms, is going to improve the animals. So working in animal welfare by improving the animal health is going to be fantastic. It's going always in the same directions. So we are fantastic in this side. Not always, as you know, to improve animal welfare have a positive repercussion also in the farms. But when we are talking about the animal health, this is the ones. And also because the animal health has and that have teach some of the elements of the farms, that is the prevention. So the animal health, talking about the biosecurity, talking about the vaccine, everything that is prevention. I also would like to move this prevention vision for the animal welfare. So when we are talking about animal welfare, I would like also to have the same views that we have in animal health. How to prevent, when we are talking about the indicator, we are talking about all the things. I don't want to have that the animal have any problems, neither for the animal health, neither for the animal welfare. So this kind that we have used to work in animal health, I would like also to move the same system to work with animal welfare.
Good point. Amelie, you wanted to come in? Yes.
Yes, thanks for the really good question. So yes, absolutely, animal health is an integral part of animal welfare. I think we can define animal welfare with those three components, so physical well-being, and health is really part of that, physical health, mental health as well, and then the ability to express natural behaviors, highly motivated behaviors. And there are so many interactions between animal health and welfare. And I just wanted to take one concrete example to illustrate that, because I think that's the most telling one probably. In broiler production, one of our key welfare asks as part of the European Chicken Commitment, you may have heard about it, is to move from fast-growing broiler breeds to slower-growing broiler breeds. And this, the science is very clear that this improves not only welfare, but health as well, and leads in particular to a very significant drop in antibiotic usage. And we have some really interesting data from the Netherlands, because the Netherlands has moved to slower-growing breeds, so moved away from the Ross 308, from the fast-growing breeds, towards the slower-growing breeds. And this has led to a dramatic decrease in antibiotic use. I think from memory, it's 74% drop in antibiotic usage in the Netherlands, and that's mostly due to that switch from fast-growing broilers to slower-growing ones. So yes, absolutely. I think there are so many benefits to animal health, to animal welfare, and reversely.
Thank you. Anyone else urging to get the floor on that one? Nope. Looking again for questions. Anyone else? Yes, please.
Maybe it's a very direct question, but can you tell me the percentage, how much of your total amount of fresh meat you sell in the higher quality animal welfare?
You are talking about Spain or Europe?
No, I was talking to your neighbor.
No, I think I can't give a specific number to that question. I'm sorry. No, I just don't have the knowledge about it. What is maybe interesting for this food forum here is I told about the initiative Tierwohl, Initiative Tierwohl, and maybe okay, 90% of the poultry that grows in Germany grows under the requirements of the Initiative Tierwohl. 90%. So this is a huge number. And it started, of course, by 0%. So this initiative Tierwohl was started to grow the higher requirements for livestock farming. And it's 60% for pig farming and 30% for cattle. I'm not sure about this. But you can see that this is like a real change in the German livestock farming from the regulatory requirements to the Initiative Tierwohl requirements. It's a lot of farmers, like 90% for poultry, are producing under the requirements for the Initiative Tierwohl. And I guess this maybe you can imagine how big the number or the size of products or production in Germany is. It's like an approach, but I'm sorry, I can't answer the question.
Thank you. And maybe following up to that question from the retail perspective, but also from a company perspective, it's true that we also in the EU have seen that having a mandatory labeling for eggs, to a certain extent, I think it has helped because it structures the supply chain in a way that, as you said, Francesco, you can go and embed that in your contracts and say from this level, don't source, I would imagine. But also, as you're saying, in Germany, the coverage is probably also helping advance. So how do you see this at your level? Would that be a good step also for an EU approach to have a certain identification of the different levels and maybe a legislation structured in that way as well?
You're asking.
Oh, sorry.
I mean, to me, the point is that it did help, but again, it works on eggs. It wouldn't necessarily work across on chocolate. So back to not treating all consumers of all products the same. I think this is very important. I mean, first of all, on certain type of products that you'll start overlaying too much information for consumers. But again, it's a good example. So having it visible in shops on eggs help understand the sense of direction. In those cases, it had a consumer value, which indirectly informed the sector and what companies would do without the need or the willingness to communicate anything to consumers. And I would say as Ferrero, we are a bit drastic on that because even on other topic like cocoa, other people communicate, we don't in general. But I think yes and no. So avoid to just saying, okay, consumer information across the board will help.
No, I think I would agree. You were talking like about fresh meat products when it comes to the Initiativetivo and the Haltungsform. But I think transparency is really key to inform the consumer so he can make his purchasing decisions as informed as it is possible. And there's some representative survey data from Germany, which is from March, I guess. So this is 84% of the consumers consciously recognize the Haltungsform, and over 90% evaluate the system positively. It shows the consumers want transparency, and even if I agree with you, I have to say on some processed foods, like on noodles or something in Germany, there's like the used eggs are from laying hens under conditions, raised under outdoor conditions, something like this. Yeah. So even under processed food, there is sometimes like a small hint about the sources of the eggs.
But Laura, but if you buy noodles, egg-made noodles, that's a primary ingredient that the consumers connects with the final product. So I think that goes with it. In other products, again, it's not eggs. Even if you're buying bakery products, you think of flour, you think of many things, and that leads the communication. That's all I'm saying.
See, I absolutely see your point. Absolutely.
Liking this discussion. And maybe, risking opening a can of worms towards the end, but I think it's looking if there's any questions, otherwise I will finalize. But Miguel, you can.
I have a question because it's quite interesting, the debate, and also because I was thinking about the different categories of the labeling. For example, the initiative of Tierhulf, sorry. You can understand, animal welfare initiative. All the retailers have not any problem to also have all the different products with the 5 different categories. So that means that you are going to have to multiply by 5 all your references in your retailers, in your stores, because at the end you have to have, ribs for the category 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have to have loin for the category 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So the retailers have not any problem to increase the number of the references to provide all this information to the consumer, because I think it's quite important, because at the end, this kind of information allows to the consumer to make a proper choice. So, and I would like to also, if there are not any problem to do that in your retailers.
I would say no, the retailers don't have a problem doing this. As I said, they are a key driver for the change in Germany, because they say, okay, all the consumers must have the possibility to buy like meat. Yeah, so it's not like a discussion. Some consumers just can't buy meat products because they don't have enough money. This is absolutely not what the food retail sector is talking about. But there are some retailers that forces their own, how to say that in English, their products to be from Haltungsform level up to, or 2, 3, 4, and 5, but not in Haltungsform level 1. So this is just like a competition factor. They say, oh, we stand for animal welfare. We stand for higher animal welfare products. So you can buy here Haltungsform level 2, 3, 4, and 5. So this is, a competition factor. And like the strategy of the retailer. Yeah.
Thank you. So we have 3 minutes, and I'll leave you to have one final quick statement that you want to leave to the European Food Forum as representatives across the supply chain on animal welfare. And Amelie, you can start.
Thank you. I think I will mostly repeat what I have said earlier around the urgency of having the clarity and the certainty about those proposals to support the farmers in their transition, in their investment choices, and for the 300 million animals that are still in cages. Thank you.
Us?
Thank you. Yeah, for me, it's also reiterating a bit what I said before. I think science is ready to help with new ways of monitoring animal welfare. I think the European partnership can be a strong driver in this area. I think also that we really need all the people that are around the table here today. So we need to move forward together and not opposing each other or only finding the differences. I think that is also changing in Europe, and I think that's a good thing because that's really the way to find each other and to make real progress. Thank you.
Thank you, Miguel.
Thank you. I think that is clear that we have to go in the way to improve the animal welfare, but maybe the animal welfare is the easy one of the equation. So to improve animal welfare, we have to be very clear about what's going to be the impact, not only in the farmers, also in the socials, in the consumer, in the import, in the export, in our rural areas. So when we are talking about the change in the regulation of the animal welfare, the easy one is the animal welfare. The difficult one is everything that is surrounding the impact of the change of the animal welfare regulation.
Thank you, Laura.
My statement is really short. If we want higher animal welfare at scale, we must not only regulate it, but make it work in the market.
Thank you, Francesco.
Yeah. So as I said before, with the regulatory system, build a true infrastructure that will help us guide investment in the right manner. And again, that's not something we've seen done recently. The ambition requires it. The second one, it's a little bit what you're saying is about the system and the way you buy things. So, I mean, the farmers is at the receiving end. You need people purchasing products in the right manner and certain business practices behind it. So I think a way of having scrutiny and driving and highlighting the good practices is fundamental. And last but not least, I mean, one of the reasons as I'm here as a non-expert is thanks to Compassion in World Farming, because they not only point the finger on things, but they also kind of praise good practices and drive that those signatures that you've seen in positive action, which I think plays also a role and will play a role in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. And this leads me to say thank you to this amazing panel with all the perspectives. So thank you so much for your contribution. And now I pass the floor to MEP Kuhler for the closing remarks. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And as you were saying, thank you for the great panel. I would like to thank you for the perfect moderation, just on time. A very wonderful job. Yeah, we have heard what is actually the legislative framework and the current situation from the Commission and also from my colleague Nils Fuchslang, who is the president of the Intergroup. And in the panel discussion, we were talking about how we can the transition to higher animal welfare successful. And I think it was just the start of the discussion. We also have to talk to the consumer, and we also have to talk to the food processor. I think that's the most important topic. Actually, also Koba Koshika is saying we have trade agreements, and when we think about animal welfare, we just don't have to see it in Europe, we have to see it worldwide. And we always have a global competition. And when we are talking about food security, we have to keep that in mind, that we not only force European farmer to do more for animal welfare, so we have to do it worldwide. I'm sorry, but I have to catch the flight, so I could say some more things, but thank you very much for everyone who was here. It was a very good discussion, a very constructive thing. I think everybody could take something with home. Thank you for being here, and now I will close the meeting because the next ones are waiting, and I think they need 3 minutes to keep everything in place. Thank you very much.